So good, so good, so good.
Everything you want for summer is at Nordstrom Rack stores now, and up to 60% off. Stock up and save on the brands you love like Vince, Sam Edelman, Frame, and Free People. Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
Kayak gets my flight, hotel, and rental car right, so I can tune out travel advice that's just plain wrong.
Bro, SkyCoin. Way better than points.
Never fly during a Scorpio full moon.
Just tell the manager you'll sue. Instant room upgrade.
Stop taking bad travel advice. Start comparing hundreds of sites with Kayak and get your trip right.
Bad advice? You talking to me?
Kayak. Got that right.
At first, I didn't think it was real. I woke up to this blinding light, and I was transported to another place. Pluto TV! Then I heard a voice.
Come with me if you want to live.
There were thousands of movies and shows, and they were all free.
The truth is out.
It's just so beautiful.
On Pluto TV, free streaming of Terminator 2, Fringe, Arrow, The 100, and The X-Files may cause excitement, loss of sleep, and sudden belief in extraterrestrials. No credit cards or alien encounters necessary. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
One crunchy bite of a Hershey's Cookies and Cream bar, and I'm taken right back to college move-in day. I was a little overwhelmed by the newness of it all. Boxes were everywhere, I needed a break from unpacking. But just as I was able to take a breath and open my Hershey's Cookies and Cream bar, my new roommate Rachel walked in. I offered her a piece, but she said no. Then after a beat, she said, "Actually, those are my favorite ones." We laughed. The ice was broken, and we've been friends ever since.
Hershey's. It's your happy place.
Hey, all you heroes, hawks, crows, rooks, and inquisitors. Welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast, where we unpack, discuss, and theorize about all the lore behind the Dragon Age series.
We are so excited to bring you this podcast. Every episode will be covering a different topic in the Dragon Age universe, from character deep dives to exalted marches and elven gods. We'll cover it all.
There will be spoilers, and always remember, swooping is bad.
Hello and welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast, where we talk about Dragon Age and its lore. I'm one of your hosts, Austin, also known as Teacup.
And I'm your other host, Shelby or Shecup.
That you are, and we're here to continue our Rulers of Ferelden series. We're here to talk about Dragon Age, the countries. I guess I said Rulers of Ferelden. It's Rulers of Thedas, but we are going to Ferelden.
Yeah. Yes, I was just going to let you go on. I thought that was intentional. But yes, we've been in Orlais for the past month or so, and we're heading to a new place, which is their next door neighbor, Ferelden.
Ferelden, our introduction to Thedas.
That's right. I still have such a fond place in my heart for Ferelden because it's where we started. And it's where two of my favorite games take place. And so... yeah, I love Ferelden. So let's just get into it. I know in kind of our other episodes we've given like an introduction to like Orlesian politics. We've given an introduction to Deventer politics, but to me it was really difficult to separate Ferelden politics from the first King Calenhad. And so we're going to kind of cover all of that in his episode all in one go.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, unlike Orlais, Ferelden is a relatively young country.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I mean, and to be fair, Orlais and Tevinter are also young countries compared to the Elven and the Dwarven empires. But when we're talking about humans specifically, yes, Tevinter is far and away older than everyone else, and then Orlais. And then the rest of the countries are fairly young. Ferelden formally is established in, I think, the Exalted Age, the 500s. And even though, as we have discussed it earlier in this season, there are, the precursor tribes to the Fereldans that live in and conquer the land that would become Ferelden.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And with Ferelden itself, like, there really has only ever been one family that's ruled Ferelden.
Correct. With a couple notable exceptions. I mean, I'm thinking of Loghain, Anora. But yeah, I mean, it has really been the Therans this whole time, which is why it does, when you know that history, it makes Arl Eamon's insistence that Alistair become king make a little bit more sense in the context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is definitely this mood along Origins and almost all of the areas that you go to, in the sense of, like, it's really prevalent in the Dwarven in Orzammar of, like, are we going to change and embrace modernity, or are we going to cling to the way things always have been? And Eamon very much represents that voice.
Right. All right, well, let's just dive right into the fun facts.
All right, let's do it.
So the first thing I have to tell you is that basically King Calenhad is Thetis' version of King Arthur. There are several events and people in his life that are direct allusions and references to Arthurian lore. So if you're familiar in that, you'll definitely see some interesting parallels throughout this episode.
Oh, well, I'll have to keep an eye out for that then.
All right, so my next fun fact is that Lake Calenhad and Calenhad's Foothold are both notable locations in Ferelden, obviously named after him.
Of course, yeah. I mean, you get that right off the get-go. You start seeing the name Calenhad, and then the second you start diving into any codexes, you realize how important this person is.
Yes, very much so. You can also receive a legendary sword that once belonged to Calenhad. It's named the Avenger, and you can get it as a gift from the current ruler of Ferelden after completing the Delicate Negotiations war table operation in Inquisition.
I really don't know the weapons in Inquisition that much, because I always just craft my own weapons. And then, we beat the game once and proceeded to use the golden nug to put all our schematics there. Right. So, I don't really know what a lot of the weapons in Inquisition do.
I don't know what any of the weapons in any of the games do, because I just pick what's best. So speaking of swords, Calenhad's iconic sword Nementos was left with Queen Marin and became an icon of Ferelden kingship. Unfortunately, it was lost under the reign of King Venedrin when Orlais attacked, beginning the classic, iconic Ferelden Orlesian War and Orlesian occupation.
Interesting. Which, obviously Merrick has a, unique sword that you can get in the DLC. And I don't know if that is supposed to be similar to that sword, or if this one's just gone.
That you can get from Merrick?
Yeah, you can get Merrick's sword off Kaelin's body.
That's right. I have no idea if it's supposed to be the same one. I would imagine not, but it's always possible.
Yeah. It's always so funny to me, and this is a little off topic, but we're just gonna get into there of in fantasy, everyone's their weapons are so unique, and a lot of time in fantasy we chalk it up to magic. But like in the real world, like ornate and like specific swords were not weapons. Like knights did not have a "this is my sword and I use it forever." Because they'd get bent, they'd get broken in battle, they would have to go get it repaired or have a new one forged. Like they weren't evergreen tools.
But it makes a great story.
It does make a great story. It's just funny, one of those things of like you grow up thinking things are this way and that's the world that exists, and then you learn about actual history and you're like, oh, this isn't as fantastical as I thought it was.
Yeah, for sure. So in 788 Storm, which is about 2 centuries after the reign of King Calenhad, a little bit less than, a little bit more than. Anyway, about 2 centuries later, the Chantry named Calenhad as one of the Anointed, which is, as we've discussed before, pretty much the closest you can get to being deemed a saint in Thedas.
Right. It's interesting to me because I just wondered how many like true Fereldans. I mean, obviously, like Calenhad is probably like the first actual Ferelden to be named in the Anointed, like from the like with the existence of the country. But like, how many people from this time in the Orlesian Chantry were named Anointed? And I just wonder, like, if Calenhad is the first.
He's not the first to get that title, no.
Not the first to get that title, but if he's the first from, like, Ferelden, it's interesting that it's given to a man.
Yeah, fair point. I'm not sure about the timeline of who gets the title, but I know... I'm just thinking about Emperor Draken the First, because he's also anointed. And to me, I'm like, well, this is a title that should be reserved primarily for people who have like spread the chant of light, right? Like people who are truly dedicated to the religious cause. And so to me, yes, Calenhad is so similar to Cordelis Draken in that he's like the founder of this country. He brings together people that you would never expect to be brought together. He does a lot to forge a nation. But I think they differ in their religious experiences. So we can get into Calenhad's story and who he is and kind of decide at the end whether or not you think he really does deserve the title of Anointed.
All right, well, let's do it.
Well, the last fun fact I wanted to give you is that it is said that Calenhad's hair was, quote, twice as yellow as the sun, and that his chin was, quote, more chiseled than the tallest peak in the Frostbacks. So that should paint you a good picture of who we're talking about today.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at just like think about Calen, but probably just more Calen in like looks.
Yeah, like Calen, but if Calen was like intimidating is how I picture him. So before we get into his early life, we've got some aliases, we've got some titles. So we know him as Calenhad Theron. He is also the King of Ferelden, the Terran of Denerim, the Silver Knight, and Calenhad the Great. To get into his early life a little bit, and we don't know a ton about his childhood, but we do know a little bit. So he was born in 510 Exalted and was the third son of a struggling merchant from Highever. Early on, he was sent to be a squire under a knight, and he was sent to squire under Sir Fereldan. Sir Fereldan was not a particularly notable knight. He was actually pretty unsuccessful, relatively poor for a knight. He did not have, any kind of reputation about him. And so when you are a knight that doesn't have a reputation, you don't have very much responsibilities. And so instead of really training Calenhad to become a knight himself, he just says, okay, you can take care of my dog. Which, to a Ferelden is not the worst punishment. Like, it's not a terrible thing to do that. But if you're being sent to be a squire, it is a little bit of like, well, this is disappointing. I expected one thing and I'm not getting that training now.
Yeah, I definitely get that. But like I'm reminded of the Assassin's Apprentice, just because like Fitz is immediately like drawn to dogs in the beginning of that story, so that's what I was thinking of. But like, yeah, I mean, I feel like this is classic fantasy beginning of like, I sought adventure and glory, and here I am cleaning up dog shit.
Right. Yeah, it's just like the disappointment of starting your new adventure to realize you're literally at the bottom of the totem pole.
Exactly.
So, Sir Fereldan, the knight that he's under, is actually his distant cousin. And he was also a knight under Arl Tenedor, who was a very young Arl, barely older than Calenhad himself. And so at this time in Ferelden history, a lot of the Arls and the Terrans had been infighting. They'd been vying one another for power, for territory, but also really the country at the time is not really a true country yet, because no one has so far united the country under one banner. They are basically like what you would imagine the Free Marches are, a bunch of city-states operating in the same general geographic location under similar cultural expectations. And this has been really going on for centuries at this point. And many even claimed that, oh, well, that's just the Alamari's nature to wage civil wars, and they'll never become a true country. So that's kind of the context that Calenhad becomes an adult in.
Right. So it's kind of like similar to just a lot of like actual history of how countries form together. Like I'm thinking of England specifically, of how, the classic four kingdoms kind of mode there, and like it really was of anyone with enough money could raise themselves an army and start calling themselves king.
Yes, very similar to that. And so each Arl, each Terran, they did have their own armies. And Arl Tenedor was not alone in that. So Arl Tenedor, he raises up this army of which Calenhad and Sir Fereldan are tangentially part of. And they had all been attacked near West Hill by the army of Arl Myrddin. Myrddin was a strong and renowned Arl who was seeking more than anything to be king of the land. So Myrddin is actually probably the strongest contender for the throne. And so he calls Arl Tenedor to come and parley. But Tenedor, of course, suspects a trap, which is smart to do because it was a trap. And so Tenedor, instead of going himself, he asks for a volunteer to impersonate him. And Calenhad steps up. As you might expect, Arl Myrddin did intend to kill Arl Tenedor, but Calenhad, instead of just impersonating him, revealed his true identity, which was disobeying orders from Arl Tenedor, number one. But number two, Arl Myrddin was so impressed that Calenhad had not only the courage and daring to disobey his own Arl, but also that he had the courage and the honor and the daring to say, hey, like, this is who I am. Like, you're not going to kill me, basically. And so he's super impressed with all of that and asks Calenhad to become his squire instead. So he is going to get the opportunity to squire under a real knight, somebody with real influence in the nobility. But Calenhad refuses the offer, interestingly enough. And he does so because Myrddin is dishonorable, because he had intended to break the rules of parley and betray Tenedor in a moment of peace, which Calenhad, along with many others, viewed as dishonorable and unworthy. Eventually, Myrddin and Calenhad, they have this back and forth, and Myrddin allows him to leave peacefully and go back to Tenedor and his castle. Ultimately, though, Myrddin would launch another assault on Arl Tenedor, and this would result in the death of both Arl Tenedor and Sir Fereldan. So Calenhad at this moment is unmoored. Like, he doesn't have a knight to teach him. However, the only reason why Arl Mirden was defeated in this assault is because Calenhad challenged him to a duel in single combat, in which Calenhad won. He did end up sparing Mirden's life, however, and he also forced Mirden to swear himself to his own service. So not only does he charge this man that he has rejected to become his squire, not only does he defeat him in single-handed combat, he also maneuvers himself and forces him to become loyal to Calenhad. It is an impressive, it is a very impressive political gambit that he's made himself here. But we do have a little bit that we know from this conversation. It has said that Calenhad said to Mirden, quote, "You are not a man known for your honor, but I believe you wish to be. You allowed me to live once, and so now I do the same for you. Perhaps if more of our people lived by honor, we would learn to trust each other long enough to live together." So after this, it's assumed, we know, that Mirden does become a little bit more honorable. They work together. Calenhad is named a Terran, gains the lands of Arl Tenedor since he's now dead. And I assume it's unconfirmed in the lore that Arl Mirden, allows him to rise up to that level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just so interesting because, this man is everything the Chevaliers pride themselves on,
except for the fact that A, he's Ferelden,
yeah,
and B, he's not a noble.
Exactly. But the code of honor, the prowess in combat, the ability to maneuver politically, the honoring the code, and I don't know, after last week there are a lot of similarities I see between Calenhand's character and Gaspard's character.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I didn't intend for them to be back to back. I think I had to rearrange the schedule a couple times, but I'm glad it happened this way because it is a really interesting comparison and parallel, because you're right. They are very similar. They're very different still. Gaspard has that kind of air of pretentiousness, he still thinks he's better than everyone, and Calenhad is much more a man of the people, I think. But yeah, I think they would be friends, if they could get over their patriotism and their nationalism. I think they'd get along swimmingly.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a world, I guess he's a little older than her, and so that's the thing of where Gaspard marries if it could be Rowan, it could be, even Honora in a sense of that. And just the idea of Gaspard and and Logain together vying for the Ferelden throne is terrifying.
Yes, let's move on though. So after the siege of West Hill, that's the turning point for Calenhad. It's when he finally starts to get somewhere. And so after this, he became determined to claim as much land as he possibly could. So he starts a campaign against the lowland Benorn, where he continues winning and gaining more allies and gaining more land. And so this campaign is really where he starts to build his own army. One of these allies that he gained was the famous or infamous apostate named Aldenon. Aldenon had been a former ally of Arl Tenedor and Arl Tenedor's father. Aldenon was so impressed by Calenhad's honorable ways and became his chief advisor after Mirden was defeated. And so while Calenhad was fighting to conquer the Benorn, and all of this was going on, he also met one of his most infamous allies, Lady Shayna. She would go on to eventually save his life, but we'll talk more about that later. During this era of his life, he also almost marries Myrddin's daughter, Meryn, and would fight his way across the soon-to-be nation of Ferelden all the way to his hometown of Highever. Terna Elithia Cúsland gathers all the bands sworn to her and faces down Calenhad's army. She refused to recognize him as king or give him any kind of authority whatsoever. In the end, the Cúslands lost that battle, but Calenhad showed her mercy and allowed Elithia to retain her lands if she swore fealty to him, which she did.
So this is really interesting to me because it now really kind of changes how I would play a Cúsland almost, in the sense of like you could play the Cúsland of like my ancestor initially didn't want to recognize the Therin throne, the Therin line. Calenhad didn't want to like bring in that, so maybe I should be the one to undo the Therin dynasty.
Yeah, I think that's a completely fair tack that you could take.
Yeah, I mean, because if you are a male Cúsland, you can marry Anora and
you can
become king.
Yeah, I don't know if you can produce a child with her, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Alistair might end up being king in that world anyway.
Right. Maybe not. I guess it depends on who dies first.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. That was really my thought on that. Really just like the popping up of like, this is really like the first name other than Calenhad that we like would recognize. Like, oh, this is the Cúsland family. You know?
Yeah. I think there's a few others like Aldenon. I think there's a location named after him. I can't remember. Maybe I'm remembering some old armor or weapon or something, but there's something with that name. But yeah, generally, unless you're like a major lore nerd like me, the Cúslands would be the first one for sure.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's really all. I mean, again, like you're very much, I do see the like Arthurian parallels here, even like the like, oh, I've almost married this daughter, but here's this other infamous ally lady, Shania, like very much between like Shayna, very much similar to like, you know, Arthur and Guinevere and Morgana. Like there's just a lot of similarities here. I wouldn't call them parallels, but similarities.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yes. So let's get into our mid-break.
All right, let's do it.
This spring, Uber Eats has you covered. Whether you're celebrating mom, dad, or your favorite grad, not all of us are great planners, and with the Uber Eats gift hub, you don't have to be. Send flowers, perfume, champagne, or just their favorite meal straight to their door. Gifts arrive in as little as 25 minutes, and you can add a personalized video message for that additional so-not-last-minute touch. So this spring, get a leg up on gift giving with Uber Eats. Last-minute gifts that land every time. Must be 21 or older to purchase alcohol. Product availability varies per region. See app for details.
The road to the NBA Finals ends here, with star guard setting the tone. The Cavs eye another upset, while the Knicks carry the dreams of all of New York. The Eastern Conference Finals continue on ESPN and ABC.
Pool days call for cookouts and lots of laundry. This Memorial Day at Lowe's, save $80 on a Charbroil Performance Series 4-burner gas grill. Now just $199. Plus, get up to 45% off select major appliances to keep dishes, clothes, and food fresh. Having fun in the sun is easy with us in your corner. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last. Selection varies by location. See associate or Lowes.com for details.
I've got this nefarious plan to go around to each of them and secretly tell them all the nasty things you said. That way they'll mutiny and I shall become the group leader.
You know, we have more comfortable rooms and basically infinite space, so why,
Why does the trained assassin prefer a quiet, unassuming spot with good choke points?
Guess you just answered that question.
Besides, I'm closer to the coffee.
Just wondering if the feathered pauldrons are an essential part of the moody rebel mage persona.
What are you talking about?
I'm working on an epic poem about a hopelessly romantic apostate, waging an epic struggle against forces he can't possibly defeat.
What do you mean, can't possibly defeat?
Well, it's not a good story unless the hero dies.
Welcome to the middle of the show, where we take time to thank our patrons. Thank you so much to all of our patrons. A special thank you to our first patrons, Genesis and Lisa M. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/DALorecast. Another great way to support us is to leave us ratings or reviews on Apple or Spotify. If you leave us 5 stars and some kind words, we will read it out on a future episode of the show. I do not have anything to read today, so if you haven't left us a comment or a review, please do that, and we'll read it out on a future episode of the show. And then last, come hang out with us on Discord. Great place to be. Great place to talk about Dragon Age. Some crazy theories going on there. For example, that the reason that Divine Justina was alone-ish with Corypheus is because she had to take a bathroom break, which you can subscribe to that or not, but I think that's pretty funny, and you can experience all that on our Discord. And with that, that's all I have for the middle of the show.
Hi, Diva. It's Rachel.
And Jordan. Yeah, hi. Quick question.
Why are you not spending your Venmo balance?
Yeah, we're concerned.
You can, buy stuff with it.
Ugh, you love buying stuff.
And earn cash back on eligible purchases.
You love purchasing eligible things.
So the money your friend sent you yesterday, that's today's ramen or rideshare or eye patches.
The skincare kind, not the pyro kind.
Spend with Venmo, then you can earn cash back with Venmo Stash. Venmo Stash bundle terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms. ID verification required to use a Venmo balance.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You know those friends who support your preference for podcasts over music on road trips? That's the energy State Farm brings to insurance. With over 19,000 local agents, they help you find the coverage that fits your needs, so you can spend less time worrying about insurance and more time enjoying the ride. Download the State Farm app or go online at statefarm.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
My people have heard legends of the Grey Warden's strength and skill, though I suppose not every legend is true.
That's really helpful. What are you, the elven god of sarcasm?
Lies, treachery, and rebellion, depending upon the story. And how could I help? I do not have my ritual dagger. I cannot access my network of mirrors to travel from the lighthouse to anywhere in the world. All I can offer is what I know.
Helpful advice from the elven god of, and I am quoting you here, lies, treachery, and rebellion.
Depending on the story.
You fear barbarians will swoop down upon you.
Yes, swooping is bad.
Okay, so, we've talked about his rise so far, but now after this mid-break, we're going to transition into his peak where, he gets to the top of the mountain he's been climbing. So in 533, he was named Terran of Denerim. He later moves through the Minoran again, laying siege to Redcliffe along the way. He is only one of 3 people who have ever successfully besieged Redcliffe.
Excluding the Darkspawn.
Okay, yes. People. Number 1, people.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. Only 3 people who have ever besieged Redcliffe. So Calenhad.
I don't remember the other 2, so please don't ask me.
Okay, I won't.
I can't. So he sieges Redcliffe, and at the Battle of White Valley in 542, he's pretty much conquered like every area of Ferelden, except for the lands surrounding Denerim. And so he had to fight against a man named Simeon. Simeon was kind of the last person standing in his way. And so to fight against Simeon, Calenhad went to the Brazilian forest to recruit the Ash Warriors to his cause. As you may know, the Ash Warriors are an elite group of Ferelden fighters who utilize the Mabari in battle. But somehow he returned not only with the Ash Warriors, but with the allegiance of both the Templars and the Mages as well. However, this did cause some conflict because his chief advisor, Aldenon, was enraged that Calenhad would betray him by condoning the oppression of mages through his work with quote-unquote chantry forces. And so, as such, Aldenon left Calenhad's service. However, in truth, this had probably been coming for a long time because the chantry, at least, claims that Calenhad had a real faith in Andraste and the Maker, and that he would never ever back down for matters of honor and Andraste. And so the chantry, or the Codex, gives us kind of an information about Aldenon, Calenhad, and the chantry and how this all kind of shook out. The Codex says, quote, Aldenon was in such a fury, such as I've never seen. He wanted a kingdom of free men, of moral people beholden to law, where a common man could tend his land safely and in peace. He lifted his staff, and his voice echoed through the hills. A civilization cannot be civil if it condones the slavery of another, and that is what the circle is. But by accident of birth, those mages will be free to live, love, and die as they choose. The circles will break, if it be 1 year, a decade, a century, or beyond. Tyrants always fall, and the downtrodden always strive for freedom. Then Aldenon left, and although Lady Shayna slew Simeon that day, and Calenhad ruled a united kingdom, my liege was not the same without his mentor and friend. We live in the kingdom built on the dreams of two great friends, and we are all lessened by Aldenon's departure.
Yeah, so this is really interesting naming because, you know, like an old kind of name for England, or like Albion is like an area in England, or like another like name for that area, especially during the Arthurian legends.
Okay.
And so like I feel like Aldenon's like similar to that in my brain. And like obviously like Aldenon in like Calenhad's Arthurian legend is Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
And like there is, I can't remember, I think it's conflicting things, and like there's so many tellings of this story in my head that it's hard for me to piece them all together. But I do think that Merlin and Arthur have a falling out at some point over the use of magic, but I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure either, but either way, you know, there are some similarities there. But Calenhad, you know, he does in truth, Aldenon is one person. The Chantry, the Circles, the Templars are complete armies. And so some may say, Aldenon said himself, that Calenhad compromised his morals. He compromised his values, his ethics. But he probably also gained more power than he lost. Because the Circles, you know, they've not only just all the people that he gains, the armies, but the Circles, they start giving him weapons. They start giving him armor. They crafted him this shining suit of silvery white armor that's able to repel blades and arrows. He gained tons and tons of followers and allies because there's a significant group of people that's looking for a religious leader, somebody that would bring the Chantry back to the homeland of Andraste. And so, yeah, he had to sacrifice his friendship one of his longest friendships, his best friend, some may say, but he gained all of this other stuff. Other relationships, other access, he becomes more famous. He really gets to his goal. And I'm not condoning that, but that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I was thinking about that of like, the Chantry obviously likes to spin that tale that like Calenhad is like their supporter and like has real faith, but I really think that it's a matter of practicality, and Calenhad knows that like if he creates this country that exiles the circles, the Chantry is going to declare an exalted march on Ferelden.
Right, exactly. Like, I do think a lot of what Aldenon has to say is wishful thinking, because like he was never going to create a nation like Tevinter that's surrounded to the north and the west by countries that can easily attack you. It's just not going to happen. Tevinter has the benefit of history on its side. Ferelden, yes, they have history, but when you're the homeland of Andraste, you're never going to create a majocracy.
Right.
Let's be real here.
Exactly. And like, he lives in the Exalted Age. So, and the Exalted Age is named for exalted marches.
You think they wouldn't do another one?
Yeah.
Let's want more.
Yeah, like, no, that's my thing. Like, he lives and understands reality in a real thing of where exalted marches aren't just like some ethereal threat that I feel like they are in the Dragon Age.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I feel like exalted marches are like a Cold War threat by the Dragon Age. But for the Exalted Age, it's no, they'll do this. Yeah. They'll do it.
Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely true, I think. Back to this battle, though, so in this fight against Simeon, we've already said Lady Shayna is the one that kills him. But just to give a little bit more information to this last battle, Simeon, he's got the greater numbers, but at the end of the day, like, Calenhad has the Ash Warriors, and they're such elite fighters that, like, the presence of them is really able to help break the defenses down. And so Calenhad's army, they do win. But Calenhad was actually almost killed in battle by Simeon himself. But Lady Shayna comes in, she saves the day, she intervenes, and she takes the hit intended for Calenhad, slaying Simeon in the process. And so with Simeon's death, Calenhad wins the battle, and nothing stands in the way of becoming king of Ferelden.
Interesting. Knowing what I know about Theron men, I'm going to assume that it is not all, and they lived happily ever after.
Well, let me just say it this way. I've named the 2 arcs that we've covered so far as Calenhad's Rise and Calenhad's Peak. So what do you think the third one is named?
Calenhad's Plateau.
Shut up. No, it's not. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about some aftermath really quickly. So later that same year, Calenhad convenes a lands meet, and he ends up being crowned King of Ferelden. He and Meryn have gotten married, and so she is his queen at his side as he is coronated, basically. And Ferelden is peaceful for a time. The Chantry was spreading throughout the nation, and everywhere they went, the king and queen were surrounded by their adoring subjects and cheering crowds. The people loved them. The commoners celebrated him as one of their own because of how he grew up, his roots in Highever. And trade opens up with other nations for the first time in Ferelden's existence, and the nation prospers. Things are amazing. Everything, Calenhad has achieved his dreams. Everything he wished for has come true. He's made it happen. However,
dun, dun, dun.
As you can imagine, his life and his rule was not filled with butterflies and rainbows for forever. In fact, quite the opposite. So, Lady Shayna, who saves his life, takes, the hit from Simeon that saves Calenhad's life, almost kills her. She had been secretly harboring an abiding love for Calenhad. And she's loved him for years, pretty much since the day they met. While they were fighting for the creation of Ferelden, she was able to hide that from everyone because, they're in the middle of a war, they're conquering, they're fighting, they're doing all the stuff. It wasn't until a disguised witch gave her a love potion that she would act on her desires. The witch in question was actually the sister of deceased Arl Simeon, who was seeking revenge.
I just think that I have a thought about this. And
oh my God, if you say, is the witch Mythal, I swear to God.
That's not what I was going to do because you said it was the actual sister of the deceased Arl Simeon. I don't think that is this isn't Flim Mythal's MO. She wouldn't do this. This isn't something that she would do that potentially pits women against each other. I don't feel like Flemeth would do that. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I agree, but I'll hear you out.
Just the thing of I guess it's less pitting women against each other. I don't see what she has to gain from this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because
I think
she's probably not afraid of Calenhad because, obviously, sure, the Kakari Wilds are technically part of Ferelden, but how much sway does Ferelden actually have over them?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Mythal doesn't have anything to gain from this situation, but also she's much more interested in, seeing the downfall of a man.
Yes.
And that's not really the situation here yet.
No. Anyway, let's see what happens. Maybe it'll all work out.
Well, what were you going to say? What was your theory? You never said it.
I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to say what I was going to say about my theory is to the end because I have it about the whole Theron line.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we'll put a pin in that. So, okay, Lady Shayna gives the love potion to Calenhad, and they begin a passionate affair. In the middle of this passionate affair, none other than Queen Maren discovers them together in bed. She was obviously heartbroken, and so she flees back to her father, her retired old elderly father, Myrddin. He was so angry that he threatened to withdraw his support of Calenhad and begin the civil war anew. And a new civil war truly almost came to fruition. All of this, everything comes out publicly, with Lady Shayna fully admitting her role in it all, apologizing for everything. Calenhad ultimately forgives Lady Shayna and refused to execute her. Myrddin refused to accept this and roused the Arls to the brink of war. And so Lady Shayna takes it upon herself to go to Calenhad's wife and queen, Queen Maren, and begs for peace. However, in this process, Myrddin is somehow there and he kills her. And so Calenhad is angry, he's heartbroken at this betrayal, and he then challenges Myrddin to a duel again. They both really wanted to avoid this outcome, but neither were willing to back down. Neither were willing to sacrifice their side of things. And Calenhad, as a much younger man than Myrddin and had already defeated him once, easily slew his father-in-law. And it's important to note that this duel between Calenhad and Myrddin is why disputes over the throne, even still today, are settled by a duel if the Landsmeet cannot decide, which we see in Dragon Age Origins.
Interesting.
I have more.
Okay, keep going.
So, the death of Calenhad's, greatest ally, the man who really started his journey to become king, and an important Jarl of Ferelden, was really too much for the young kingdom to bear. The other Jarls refused to kind of back down in their claims against Calenhad, and the threat of civil war loomed still. And so Calenhad went to his wife, Queen Mairen, one last time, and although no one knows what he said to her, he simply vanished after this. And so he left Mairen with a signed proclamation abdicating his throne in favor of his unborn son. This son would go on to exceed the throne as King Waylon I, who's really and truly the one credited with the start of the Theron dynasty. King Calenhad never reappeared. Some say he was still alive and always in hiding. Some say he went to the Korkari wilds. Some say he went to live with the dwarves, and others say he became a reclusive monk in the Chantry, but none will ever know the truth.
This is so interesting because, obviously, this is how the King Arthur legend ends. King Arthur dies or disappears, depending on what version of the story you're reading. And there is this kind of, basically almost Christ-like figure in the story of one day Arthur will return and restore England to its glory as the true king of England. And so that's interesting, but it's also interesting to me with his wife, and I think that I think logically for me what happened is I don't think that I'm sure there's lots of theories that she poisoned him after he signed this proclamation or killed him in some way. I think what actually happened is she said, you really want peace? Put your money where your mouth is. Abdicate your throne and give it to our child. You'll have your kingdom, but it won't be yours.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think she poisoned him. I don't think she killed him. I think that they both just realized that there's no coming back from what he did and killing Mirrodin, and that she probably couldn't forgive him. The country wasn't going to be able to forgive him, and the best thing that he could do to avoid the country going back into war was to leave.
Right, and I think that the only thing that would convince Calenhad to abdicate is to basically convince him that it's the honorable and thing to do for the greater good.
Right. Yes. Yeah, for the good of the country and the good of his family. I think both.
Right, and I think that there's just this really interesting kind of parallel here between Merrick and Calenhad. Adultery and elf coochie aside. The parallel of they both go on these journeys and are never seen from again.
Right, after making serious mistakes, betraying their allies. The parallels between his descendants, I mean, they are wow, you could be twins.
And this is what I really think is my crackpot theory that I'm going to get to. The witch, the sister of Arl Simeon, whatever it is. I think the blood potion was also a curse. I think it cursed Calenhad's line. In that there would always be they might be honorable men, they might be good leaders, but they will forever succumb to whatever their weakness is.
Yeah. Well,
let's think.
They do.
And we'll get into some other, but even the warden ruler too. The one we meet in Soldier's Peak.
Sophia Dryden.
Sophia Dryden.
I mean, she doesn't ever become queen.
Right. But like there is this kind of similarity where they have such great qualities, but then there's this kind of weakness that gets in there with them. And Calen like is an honorable and good dude, but allows his vanity and his strive for glory to be his undoing. Merrick, super, super likable dude. I mean, you make someone as grumpy as Logain like you. I mean, that's a gift. But the elf coochie,
Well, I think Merrick's issue is that he just wants to be loved. Yes, but no, I agree. And it is interesting, but to just throw another wrench into your theory, though, we do have some Qunari lore to get into.
All right, well, let's do it.
So Calenhad is seen as like a hero amongst heroes among the Qunari. And they believe, like Fereldans believe, that Calenhad was born into poverty and that, he's just a nobody dog handler. But the Qunari believe, okay, well, he's ambitious. He searched for knowledge that would bring him power, and he finds that knowledge. And the Qunari believe that Calenhad made bargains to trade stories upon stories until he finally learned a powerful secret from a scribe that would set him on the path to power by way of a witch of the wilds. That witch of the wilds led him to a cave where a great dragon lay dying. Calenhad used his dagger on the ancient dragon and drank its blood, giving him a newfound strength that made him undefeatable in battle. This strength has been passed down the Theron line until the modern day. It allowed Calenhad to conquer Ferelden and establish his bloodline as royalty. We do know at least part of this story has to be true because Magister Aurelian Titus captured King Merrick and hooked him up to the Magrallan to use his blood, the great dragon blood, and it worked. So there has to be something with the Theron bloodline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It just the like Witch of the Wilds, like I don't think that the writers of Dragon Age intend for this Witch of the Wilds to always be a stand-in for Flemeth.
I agree.
Because we have confirmed 3 Witches of the Wild.
Morrigan, Yavanna, and Flemeth.
Yes.
But they're all related, though, to be fair.
Right. And I just am at the point here of like, I think it's some kind of witch who did this or whatever. And I think that this great dragon, like obviously we know that dragon blood has magical properties. I mean, it does in every single fantasy universe that dragons appear in. But my kind of thing here is like, why do the Qunari admire a man who didn't stick to his assigned role in society?
That's a great question. My question is, how the hell do the Qunari have this information?
I don't know. Maybe the Qunari landed in Thedas long before recorded history says they did.
Well, I think we do know that they did because they have the colony or whatever in the Korkari Wilds, but like this is such a detailed story that I'm like, how did they have this information? And I would say, well, it would make sense if he went to the Qunari and did this with the Qunari after he's exiled. Mm-hmm. But it can't be that, because if he had done that, it wouldn't have passed down his bloodline because he's already fathered the child.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's something he discovered in the time. Maybe he discovered a group of Qunari and a Witch of the Wilds or whatnot in his time with looking for the Ash Warriors, because like that's really kind of like the mysterious period of his story where it's like, okay, you went looking for this and you came back with the Circle of Magi and the Chantry behind your back. Like what that
That's true.
That's like, okay, I'm going to go get some milk. Oh, I came back with filet mignon too.
And $1 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And there are some gaps in his rise era that it could have happened for sure. So I see that theory. My last kind of point that I want to bring up with Calenhad, though, is does he really deserve to be anointed of the Chantry?
I think I know why he's anointed.
I understand why he's anointed for sure, but does he deserve to be?
This is what I think that... Does he deserve to be anointed probably for his faith? In Andraste? No. But, I mean, if we really want to talk about it, if he hadn't had the wherewithal to unite himself with the Chantry probably would not have spread as much as it does through Ferelden. So if we want to talk about, like, being anointed because you have contributed to the spreading of the Chant of Light, I think he has done that.
Fair. That's a fair point. I think the only reason he's really and truly anointed is because he brings the Chantry back officially to the land of Andraste. You know, like she's the one for them. And so like, okay, yeah, we've gotten her homeland back under the fold. We can, you know, have kind of the historic sites to send people to on pilgrimages. Yes, like that's amazing. Because the truth of the matter is anybody who founds a realm, who founds a kingdom or a country, they can be credited with spreading the Chant of Light. And you don't see a bunch of free marcher viscounts being declared anointed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's also possible because he's anointed in the Storm Age, which I believe, because there's 2 attempts to occupy Ferelden.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Sure. I don't remember. Yes.
I can't remember. So maybe they do that as a way to like make peace with Ferelden too, of like, hey, like we're going to name him anointed because just to make you
mayhaps.
I don't know. That's my theory. I don't know. I'm after this story, I'm kind of like I'm going back and forth because I do see the argument for him being anointed, but like if we look at it as an example, that's really his only kind of counterpart that I can think of with Draken. Draken wasn't perfect, but like he died with his legacy intact.
Yeah.
Calenhad doesn't really like, and Draken dies with his honor intact, and I don't feel like Calenhad does.
No, not at all. He definitely tarnishes his legacy at the end, with the way things go down. But I do agree with you that like Draken is really the only one that he compares to in Theda's history, but Draken is so much. I don't want to say he's more successful, but like. It's just on a grander scale because Orlais is bigger. They've got more money. He founds the whole institution of the Chantry. And so like, it's just on a much bigger scale than what Calenhad does, even though what Calenhad does is so, impressive on its own. Because he starts from far, far, far further down than Draken does, in terms of like the nobility poll.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think they are very comparable. But the big difference for me between the two of them is like Draken is so committed to his faith. He is so committed to the Chantry. Like he truly believes it. I'm not sure Calenhad ever does.
Right. And it's just so hard to compare because like, I feel like it's like comparing, it's not quite this much time, but like it's like comparing Martin Luther to like one of the like St. Paul or like these other people that are like, Draken is like in it. He's not that far removed from Andraste's life.
Right, true.
Like that's really where it's at. And Calenhad is very removed from Andraste's life. Probably 1,000 years, I would guess, almost.
It's about 800.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I just feel, or like someone like an early Christian like patriarch from the like 100s to comparing that to Martin Luther or something like that, or even like St. Anselm of Canterbury. Like both did great things, both did contributions, but like how can you compare someone who is so close to the beginning of something versus someone who is deep into the established institution of it?
Yes, I think it's a great point. But are there any other things you want to talk about in regards to Calenhad before we get into our side character?
I really hate that I like Draken more.
Oh, T.
Because I hate Orlais. But I just like, and it's not really like true. It's the thing of like, and with Calenhad, it's more tragic because like he's enchanted. He's not making this choice of himself. Probably if he had made the choice, if he had had his senses, he probably would not have dishonored his marriage in that way. But like at the end of the day, like I feel like it's a reluctant warrior who goes to fight his father-in-law in a sense of, you know, so much going on. And like, there's always this tension. And I think it's really, really interesting world building that you can't have Alistair kill Loghain and marry Nora, which makes like logical sense. But it again is this other parallel of like, you can't murder your father-in-law and expect your marriage to continue.
Yeah, it's another parallel between the two of them for sure. For me, I appreciate Calenhad's story because it is a story of like, you know, it's kind of an Icarus story of a man who rises from nothing, achieves great heights, goes too high and comes crashing down. And I like that as a story better, even though it has a sad ending, than Draken's story of, well, he was just perfect this whole time. But I guess in the end, they do both have the same endings of their lineages end, their dynasties end. They're not successful forever, you know?
Yeah, and I think that is like the kind of story is like nothing lasts forever.
Right.
And just the like, I think it's also the stories we like to hear of like, it's not that it's a good feeling, but it's the thing of like a relatable thing of like, you are your own worst enemy. Like you are so worried about your enemies on the outside, but you ignore the ones internally, like internal to you. You ignore your faults in yourself, and that's your undoing.
Yes, exactly.
It's good storytelling.
It is a great story, and that's like intrinsic to all of human nature. So it's not just Calenhad, everybody. It's all of us.
Well, with that, I think we need to get our side character going.
Yeah, we do. So today's side character, as you know, as all of you know, I always theme it around, you know, we're in Ferelden, so we're going to talk about a Ferelden. So today's side character is Inez. You may not know that name if you haven't played Awakening, but she is often referred to as Inez the Botanist, and she appears in Awakening as a colleague, and I put friend ? Of Wynn because she openly antagonizes Wynn and talks about how much she hates her. So there's that, but they claim to be friends. They're both from the Circle of Magi in Ferelden. And if Wynn is not killed in Origins, you can meet her in Awakening in the city of Amaranthine outside the Chantry of Our Lady Redeemer. And Wynn will ask you to look for her friend Inez, who has been missing after she left to search for plants in the Winding Wood.
Okay, I have to pause here.
Yeah.
They named a chantry of Our Lady Redeemer. And then with their full chest said that they did not take influence from the Catholic Church.
To be fair, BioWare never said they didn't take influence from Catholicism. They say that the Chantry is not a one-to-one comparison.
That is true. And their statement is true. It is not.
Anyway, moving along.
Just saying.
We have said this 10,000 times on the podcast. So anyway, Wynn sends you to find Inez because the Circle of Magi is planning to convene in Cumberland in Navarra, where the Libertarians plan to propose seceding from the Chantry. Inez, meanwhile, is uncontactable. So Wynn is like, I need you to convince her to, hey, come to this convention. You're well respected. You're a voice of reason. We want you to secure the vote of the Equitarians and prevent open rebellion. We know from Asunder that things don't end up that way, but that's Wynn's intentions in Awakening. When you finally get to Inez in the middle of nowhere, she is looking for northern pricklewood seeds, which are very rare and only grow in blighted lands. Inez fully and openly refuses to leave until she gets these seeds and admits to you, I don't really like Wynn. Like, she's open about it. And I have a quote from Inez about Wynn. She says, quote, well, what does little miss I'm so special the fade shines out of my bum want from me? So Wynn thinks they're friends, but I don't think Inez thinks they're friends.
That tracks for Wynn.
Inez also even implies that Wynn's attitude is one of the reasons that Uldred became an abomination, and that Wynn is always bossing everyone around all the time, which seems like it might be the truth.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true. I have one thing to say about this, in that I just really think it really is in character for Wynn for me that she thinks she has this friend and she has no idea, actually just despises her. Like, that just tracks for me with Wynn, and I don't know why. I feel like Wynn does a lot of character growth between Origins and Asunder.
Yeah.
But also in this kind of thing, this quest with her sent me into a rage.
Why?
Because I had everyone's favorite apostate with me.
Anders,
yes. And when Wynn's telling the story about that, you know, the Libertarians are going to propose seceding from the Chantry, little Mr. I'm going to blow up the Chantry in, 7 years or whatnot, says, well, that would be terrible. The circles need the Chantry. To which I want to take a screenshot, go into Dragon Age 2, hold it up to Justice Anders and say, this you?
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts. Number one, Anders pre-Justice is a totally different person.
I know.
Number two, I understand the frustration. I do. I agree with you, though, that it's like so on brand for Wynn to have this friend that actually just hates her guts. But I also get the feeling that Inez hates everyone's guts. Inez doesn't seem like a particularly friendly person. She seems very grumpy. And I also think that Inez, I feel like this DLC is kind of like their redemption in a way, because like Inez is older than Wynn. And like, I do feel like it's kind of the old lady, the grumpy old person who's, mad about everything and has to complain about everything, which they kind of gave that a little bit to Wynn in the base game. And then they said, no, we're going to do it for real. Here you go. Here's an actual old lady.
BioWare has done this already, and I'm going to propose something, and I want you to tell me if you think you agree. Inez is Jolie Bendo.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like someone in the thing of like, I'm grumpy and I detest being involved in the Jedi Order. But if you ask me to pick a side on who I'm going to support, it's going to be the Jedi Order. Like,
right.
Like, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, Inez would probably support, maintaining the circles in some kind of way. Probably not, given her allegiance and what Wynn wants her for, probably not in a way that's like, oh, let's be as fully repressed from the Chantry or fully oppressed by the Chantry, and let's let the Templars do whatever they want to us.
Right.
Is like a thing of like, no, we should be, we should have these places, and these should be safe places for mages to be. I think Inez probably subscribes to that, but like is just grumpy about it, and like gets really grumpy with anyone who kind of takes a holier than thou kind of attitude. And as much as I love Wynn, and I think that her heart is in the right place, she has a holier than thou attitude.
100%. Totally agree. And you know what? I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, to be fair, I don't know if Wynn is actually intended to be, or if Inez is intended to be older than Wynn or not. Because I'm like remembering there are some mods that make her hair look blonde, and then I think in the base game it looks more gray. So I'm not really sure of the age thing, but that's just kind of my headcanon. Mm-hmm. But the last thing I want to talk about with Inez before we wrap up is that she's also a renowned author, especially of a book titled The Botanical Compendium. And this book has tons of codex entries that come from it, including the codex entries for Ambrosia, Amrita Vein, Arbor Blessing, Crystal Grace, Deathroot, Deep Mushroom, Dragonthorn, Elfroot, Embrium, Felindaris, Prophet's Laurel, Spindleweed, and Vandal Aria, all of which are plants.
Yeah. Which is another kind of thing, because we know, like, there's obviously all the writers that are in the Brother Genitivi dies in the end.
Yeah.
But like authors of like books, she's the third really that we know a good deal about.
There's more that we know of, but they're a little bit more obscure. Like they don't necessarily come into the games.
Right. But like, so Genitivi, Varric, and Inez are like the three big ones, I would say.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think she only has written the one book, though.
There's a sister who writes a bunch of stuff that are codex entries.
Yes.
I can't remember her name. But it's not the sister that's in Brother Genitivi dies in the end.
It's Sister Patrine.
Yes.
Because it's so close to Sister Patrice.
Yes, and Scroof Sister Patrice.
Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap it up because we're way over time today.
All right, thank you so much for bringing this. We had a lot to say, but this is a very, very important character. In like Calenhad, and Inez is very, very interesting. So I hope you all enjoy. Thank you so much for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. Thank you, Shelby, for bringing the research, and everyone, we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. If you have any lore questions, topics to cover, or side character suggestions, join the Cups Podcasting and More Discord server. It's the best place on the internet.
You can also support the podcast financially and ensure its continuation by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/DALorecast. If you enjoyed the show or learned something new today, please subscribe, leave us a review or comment, or join the Patreon.
The Dragon Age Lorecast is part of the Robots Radio Podcasting Network. If you enjoyed our intro or outro music, give a big shout out to Pipeman Studios. Until next time, look to the sky, the dawn will come.
Did you know if your windows are bare, indoor temperatures can go up 20 degrees? Turn the temperature down with Blinds.com and get up to 50% off custom window treatments like solar roller shades and more during the Memorial Day mega sale. Whether you want to DIY it or have a pro handle everything, we've got you. Free samples, real design experts, and zero pressure. Just help when you need it. Shop up to 50% off site-wide and huge savings on doorbusters right now during the Memorial Day mega sale at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions apply.
How well do you know your video game lovers?
Have you ever wondered how your video game bays stack up against all the other delectable digital dates?
I'm Genesis, the girl whose motto in life is love, laugh, tequila. And on Two Girls, One Ship, we analyze, rate, and review all that the world of video game romances has to offer.
And I'm Vervada, the hopeless romantic cat lady and lifelong gamer.
But you should know that our podcast centers on character and romance analysis and doesn't shy away from exploring the fun of physical connection.
Or from the deep emotional connections built between two characters, using specific in-game dialogue and the overall narrative journey. So join the Two Girls, One Ship shipsters, and remember,
beauty is in the eye of the controller.